I've seen this film, and I'm pretty sure it starred Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Like, this was basically, like, if you were going to make this film in the mid-2000s, Lizzie McGuire would be starring in it. Like, the first half of this film was, honestly, like a Nickelodeon Disney Channel, body swap comedy, which looked nice and was all about teenagers. Like, I was like, where's this going?
Hello there, it's Friday, which means it's time once again for the best movie podcast ever. The only movie podcast to offer objective and hyperbole-free discussion of every movie in the known universe. I am your host, the podcaster with no name, Konrad, and with me as always, ain't nobody does it better. It's Anthony James.
Good afternoon, good evening, good night.
Little musical intro for Anthony there.
I love that intro for me, because like if there's ever a style of music which probably is the antithesis to who I am, I love the music, don't get me wrong, but I think when people think of it, they don't really think of that sort of R&B sort of,
No.
That's not
I feel like you and Shaka Khan, who I believe was the artist credited with that song, are fairly far apart in terms of just about everything, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know what the music intro to me would actually fit. I'm swayed by the fact that I'm wearing this shirt to think it's something with a banjo, but actually, you never know.
I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit, isn't it? To associate you with folk. But I don't like Mumford and Sons, so no one knows any other folk apart from that in the modern day. So we're not going to have
segue. Mumford and Sons obviously have become a huge stadium band, like to the point where they actually they do some folk still, and they've also went into sort of a more sort of alt rocky thing too. I am a fan of Mumford and Sons, I will say. I know that there's a few songs that are the same, but I will say this is really interesting. I actually bought a vinyl of Mumford & Sons back in like 2010, which is like a small, I think it's an 8-inch. I'm not exactly sure. It's quite maybe 7-inch. It's quite an odd size. It was sort of a little EP they made with with other musicians, and they didn't call themselves Mumford & Sons. They called themselves the Wedding Band, right? And it was a limited release of this 4-song EP, and that's the only place you can get the songs, except I think Spotify, obviously. I looked it up, Konrad, on eBay. The vinyl that I have is selling for 500 quid.
Get it on there. You'd be like, what was that guy? Was it Martin Shkreli? Like the dickhead pharma company guy who bought like the last Wu-Tang Clan album. They only made one copy of it and he bought it. You'd be like a less shitty version of him.
I don't know the name of the farmer who bought the last Wu-Tang Clan album, to be honest with you. We'll go with Martin Shkreli.
That's the kind of high concept banter that you come here to the best. I almost said the After Dark podcast. Then that's not what this is. It's the best movie podcast ever, and that's what you come here for.
Yeah, we are very much in the light, Konrad. Very much in the light, not After Dark.
Yes, yeah, we are in the light. But it's not just that, because also, what else will we talk about here on the best movie podcast ever but Tony Hawk documentaries? We're going to have some conversations about that this week. We're going to talk about Ethan Cohen quitting filmmaking, an exciting new game to stand in for Back to the Future, because I've made an executive decision to do something different this week. Back to the Future's not retired. It's not happening this week. And a critically acclaimed anime, which also happens to be the second highest grossing Japanese movie of all time. So I say, let's talk about some gosh darn movies.
Let's do it.
Movies, specifically skateboarding ones, let's talk about them. So there's a Tony Hawk documentary in the works, directed by a man by the name of Sam Jones, who I, to be honest, didn't know anything about until I read the story about a Tony Hawk documentary being made by him. He has made thus far a handful of musical documentaries, and he will helm the thus far unnamed documentary. And I'm going to admit something here.
Okay.
As I was reading the article about this, I came up with a joke, but full disclosure, AV Club did admittedly beat me to the gag of suggesting Birdman as a name for this documentary. Those of you who don't know, Birdman is one of Tony Hawk's nicknames. But I'm going to repeat it anyway because it proves my street cred as someone who was very much involved in the skateboarding scene in the late 90s and early 2000s. So Birdman would be a good name for this documentary, I think.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's already a Birdman film in the last sort of 5-6 years. That's the only thing standing in its way.
We can just ignore that. Anthony, where do you stand on skateboarding? How excited are you for this?
I will definitely watch it. I've fallen out of the old skateboarding knowledge. I don't know any of the people these days, to be quite honest with you. I used to know quite a bit from the video games and from watching it on TV, but I don't know. Bam Margera, is he still about? No,
no, absolutely not. He is the opposite of about these days.
He's the opposite of about. But I know there's apparently some 12-year-old kid who landed the first 1080 in competition. Is that true?
Maybe. I have like an encyclopedic knowledge of every skateboarder that was in those Tony Hawk games between the years like 1998 and 2003. But anything either side of that, and I'm lost. I actually the most I've been involved in skateboarding since then was watching the Olympics in Tokyo and watching a bunch of like sick ass 13-year-olds just absolutely shred and be like, well, they're better than I was at 13, and they're certainly better than I am at 34. So. Good on them, I guess. I've wasted my life.
Yeah, there was a 13-year-old British girl who did a really good job, got a bronze medal. I watched that. Sidestep from skateboarding just for a second, though. Guys, if you want to watch an unbelievable moment in the Olympics, the BMX tricking, what do you call it? Matt Hoffman biking, basically.
Sure.
There was a woman from Britain who won the gold in that against an American. The American was the hot favorite. Go and watch like the 10-minute video on YouTube of it. I think it's on BBC.
Was she the one who did like the 360 backflip?
Yeah. So she failed in the first round, and then the American went on and got this 19-year-old American who's amazing, got an amazing huge score, and then the British girl was like, instead of playing it safe and going for like I should say woman, sorry, not girl, going for a silver or a bronze. She was like,
solidifying the silver.
Yeah, she was like, screw it, I'm going to go for it again. And she went for this trick that had never been landed, 360 backflip, and she got it, and she won the gold. It was unbelievable.
Takes, some balls to do that. I always feel like skateboard, I'm not going to rank the extreme sports here. They all seem pretty cool to me. But BMXing seems like the most dangerous because when you do a trick, if you screw it up, either you're landing on the bike or the bike is landing on you.
Yeah,
and either way, that's a bad situation.
Yeah, skateboarding, like you've got your elbow pads, you've got your knee pads, you've got your helmet. You just are a person falling onto the ground. Whereas in BMX, you've got like this apparatus which could like take your knee off or something.
This heavy metal thing whipping around your head at rapid speeds. Go on, carry on.
I was going to say yes, but I am very, very much looking forward to the Tony Hawk documentary. It's sort of, I really enjoyed the Michael Jordan documentary, which we've talked about before. I don't know about on air, but the idea of having a Tony Hawk documentary where he was properly the top of the game and like he was the household name. I'm looking forward to seeing a bit of the behind the scenes, some of the stories, seeing even all the names that I was familiar with at the time talking. Maybe hopefully they can get a load of the skateboarders from the time to talk in the documentary. That'd be really cool. You know?
Jeff Rowley involved. Let me see a dark slide. It is actually all like shot and it's at the editing stage now, and apparently cool. Hawk was heavily involved in it, so it should hopefully hit our screens sometime in 2022. And it should be pretty involved. I think it's going to be similar to The Last Dance. I think it's going to be similar to The Last Dance in terms of access. I think it will be probably slightly less ego-stroking than The Last Dance was to Michael Jordan. And I say that as a Chicago Bulls fan. The Last Dance was very much a PR spin piece for Michael Jordan. I think it's safe to say.
And I had a problem with that.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Tony Hawk seems to enjoy the fact that he's kind of faded into obscurity and no one actually knows who he is anymore, which is absolutely how we should age into our 40s and 50s as far as I'm concerned.
I am actually curious, Conrad. Sorry, before you go on, I am curious though. As far as I remember, there was no like The Last Dance with Michael Jordan had built-in drama based on the ego that he was, but also how much sort of like, I suppose you could say a dick, but the high standards that he set, as well as that, the fact that he left and came back. Whereas Tony Hawk's career doesn't actually spark to me I'll learn in the documentary, but as one that was full of drama. Like, I don't really see where the drama is going to come from.
Yeah, well, I suppose like trying to land the 900 in a competition, that's probably quite a big part of it. And other than that, just being like really good at skateboarding, vert skateboarding, I guess. But I mean, I can't claim to be an expert. We'll find out in 2022. We'll keep our eyes peeled for that one. So I was going to try and segue neatly into this, but there's not really any good way of doing it except to say, if we are keeping our eyes peeled for a Tony Hawk documentary, something that we will not see, no matter how well we keep our eyes peeled, is Ethan Cohen making films anymore, because apparently he's done with that. So in an interview on the Score podcast, longtime collaborator, composer Carter Burwell suggested that Ethan Cohen is done with movies, just doesn't want to make movies anymore, apparently, and that whatever he does going forward is unlikely to involve the movie industry. He's going to focus instead on theatre and other non-movie projects. And although Ethan and Joel Cohen have worked separately in the past, it's pretty rare, to be honest. Normally Ethan is just uncredited as a writer and director on the movies they actually make together. I've never actually looked into that to see why Ethan Cohen tends to be uncredited when, by all accounts, he is equally contributing to these projects. But it seems as if Joel Cohen's latest movie, The Tragedy of Macbeth, marks more than just a one-off departure for the pair. So if you're a fan of the Coen brothers as a team, it could be a bit of an end of an era moment this year, because we might not see them working together again.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things that I never actually... like partnerships, like, you know, Lennon, McCartney, stuff like that. Partnerships that do break up, and like they obviously they're brothers. They probably haven't broken up, you know what I mean? But they're going to stop working together. You don't actually really know what the strength of each one really was until they go their separate ways and see. So we'll really see Joel Cohen now. Like, what is his film going to lack? What Ethan Cohen brought? It's going to be really interesting to see going forward. You know?
Yeah, definitely, and. Yeah, the Tragedy of Macbeth is an interesting one to kind of start that comparison off with, because it's essentially like a reimagining of the Shakespeare tale starring Frances McDormand and Denzel Washington, which is, I'm assuming it's a period piece. I don't actually know. So it could be like a Baz Luhrmann style Romeo and Juliet movie, which would just be great. I'd love to see Joel Cohen go down that route, and we'll get the Cardigans doing the soundtrack for it. But who knows? As you say, we've not really seen them separately very much at all. But that's due to release in film festivals in September of this year. So we should see what Joel's movies in an Ethan-less world are going to look like fairly soon. But yeah, it's sad. I really like some Coen Brothers films. I think they had a stretch in the kind of late 90s to mid 2000s where they made some pretty bad movies. Stuff like kind of Burn After Reading and what's the other one I don't like? Oh, their remake of the Lady Killers. But I think they kind of they kind of found themselves. Although I will say actually, of their remake of the Lady Killers, Tom Hanks is great in that movie. He was so funny in that.
There's some really good performances in it. Let's be honest. But yeah, it wasn't one of the best ones. I like, obviously the ones that they are really, really well known for, they will always be remembered for. And I think that he's done enough in his film career that he will be remembered as a very good filmmaker.
Absolutely, yeah.
But it'll just be interesting going forward. It's a shame, actually, in a way. Like I really do like. I'm quite a fan of Coen Brothers films. Like, there's enough there. Like No Country for Old Men, True Grit. I really like that. Fargo, especially, to be honest with you.
Fargo is amazing.
The Big Lebowski. Oh Brother, We're Out There. Like, these are all fantastic films that I have a really real. Even A Serious Man was good as well. There's like a real place in my heart for a lot of these films, and it's just sad that they might not be the same. But maybe they will. Who knows? Maybe they were like that in tandem that actually Joel Cohen will just carry on. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hope whatever Ethan Cohen ends up doing, it's creative in some way, because he's obviously very talented and he will be missed in the movie industry. Yep. Speaking of things that have missed in the movie industry, Suicide Squad has come in beneath expectations. Now, I'm gonna preface this by saying this entire episode of the Best Movie Podcast Ever is going to be very movie grossing centric, and I didn't mean it to be. It just kind of came up a lot while I was writing the script for this episode. And obviously, the money something makes is not an indication of quality, but it's interesting for the future of these Suicide Squad franchise that James Gunn's Tilt at It has only made 26.5. I say only, but it's made 26.5 million domestic in its opening weekend, as US moviegoers have chosen to, probably wisely, stay at home because of the Delta variant of the COVID-19. Is it a virus? I should know this by now. It's only been going
Coronavirus,
on
yeah.
for like... Yeah, it is a virus, isn't it? Of course it is.
Literally the name.
Yeah, it is. Listen, I'm not here to deal with the details, all right? I'm a big picture guy. With the movie taking 35 million internationally, and Warner Brothers were apparently hoping for a 30 million opening when compared to Black Widow's 80 million worldwide, and Fast 9, which made 70. So... It's weird. It's interesting and it's sad because critics and people who've gone to seen it. Have you seen it? I can't remember.
No, I will be seeing it soon, but I have not seen it as of yet.
My partner has seen it. They very much enjoyed it. Most of the people that I've seen, that I know who have seen it or that I've read reviews from, seem to really like it. So it seems to be doing very well in terms of audience and critical reception. And a shame that it's not making as much money as Warner Brothers would like. However, 26.5 million domestic and 30 million internationally is not exactly bad. So maybe Warner Brothers should have slightly lower expectations, given we are still in a pandemic.
Yes, and also given the fact that this was a film that the audience knew they were trying to plaster over the cracks of the last one, which was terrible, and they called it the same name basically. They added a "the," as well as that they were heavily relying on advertising saying that it was the director of Guardians of the Galaxy, which everyone knows is in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and they're expecting a third. So even at that, people are probably thinking like, nah, don't. Maybe I'll go see it. Like myself, I wanted to go see it. I still haven't seen it. Like I will probably see it, but I still haven't seen it because I'm not really that caring. I'm sure I'll enjoy it. I'm sure, but I'm not expecting to go away like I do when I come out of a Marvel film thinking, oh my god, that could like say what you want to get about Black Widow. I came out thinking to myself, okay, so where is that in the timeline? What happened here? Where is this character going to come back? When I go to see Suicide Squad, I'm going to have a few laughs. Probably I'm going to enjoy certain things, and then I'm going to go home and I'm not going to think about the DC universe again. So
yeah, and I think as well, like it's similar to when they brought in Joss Whedon to further ruin the Justice League movie, where obviously a better director brings in a higher quality of work. In this case, I think James Gunn is delivering, by all accounts, delivering a better finished product than what David Ayer did, or rather what they did to David Ayers after they finished editing it all to hell. But I don't think your average movie-going fan really cares that James Gunn is directing this. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's a lot of people out there who hear the director of Guardians of the Galaxy is making the new Suicide Squad movie and that's enough to get them in the cinema. But I feel like the era of big name directors is more or less over now, with the exception of maybe like Martin Scorsese and Quentin Tarantino, who are like the last real holdouts. So Spielberg still occasionally turns out one or two. But even though he might have made a better film, I feel like that's not enough to get people in the cinemas, and I guess is demonstrably the case here. But hopefully people go see it.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I think he did such a good job with Guardians of the Galaxy that people just want to watch Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, he made those characters iconic from the get-go, and now people just want to go and see Star-Lord and see Gamora. Like, it's like, oh, it's the director of Guardians of the Galaxy? Is Peter Quill going to be on it? No? Well, then I'm not going to go see it, That's how I kind of feel about it,
Put Kurt Russell in Suicide Squad. That's what I'm saying. Yes, so go, as long as you're safe, go and see Suicide Squad. Apparently it's very good. I haven't seen it yet. I probably will see it at some point because it sounds fun. Now, we've got something exciting. We're here. If you're listening to this now, you are here at the birth, the genesis of a new segment in the Best Movie Podcast Ever. Anthony, let me ask you a question. How do you feel about The Price is Right?
I mean, I like it whenever they say higher than up to there. That part. I like some of it. I'll not say. Did Bruce Forsyth do The Price is Right in the UK?
He did. He did it for like 70 years, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So not the host really, but the it was all right. Like I'm getting where we're going here with this, and you mentioned already the grossing. I'm getting where we're going.
Yeah. So what we've got for you is a new game. It was always going to come because at some point Back to the Future was going to hit a week where all the answers were awful. So instead I was like, you know what? I'm going to devise something else. And I've been cooking this away. This has been percolating away in the back of my mind for several weeks now.
Okay.
And I've devised a supplemental game, so it's not replacing Back to the Future. It's just I'm gonna plug it into the gaps where there's a bad week where I don't like any of the answers for Back to the Future. Excellent. Wherein you, Anthony, and you, dear listener, will hear 10 movies from a given year and need to guess, in the style of The Price is Right, whether they grossed higher or lower than the subsequent movie internationally. The answers are all in dollary-doos, and we'll subtract a point for each incorrect answer. So you'll hear them all. You'll hear all 10, because where's the fun in missing out on an answer? With that, does that all make sense to you, Anthony?
Okay, so my understanding of it is you're going to read out a name of a film and then read out another one. Let's say film A, film B. If I think film B is less than film A, then I'll say lower.
Yes.
And then we'll go to film C. If that's less than film B, I say lower again.
Yes, and to get all 10 points, you also need to get within 5 million. I reserve the right to change this based on how well Anthony does, but within 5 million of the gross of the first movie. So I'm going to name you a movie. Okay. You have to tell me how much you think it grossed internationally. If you get within 5 million of that one, you get the first point, and then it's higher or lower from there on.
Right, not happening. Let's see.
You never know. You never know. Once you'll get a feel for it.
Yeah,
you'll get a feel for it.
I'll get it.
Okay. So, with that in mind, Anthony, are you ready for the exciting new game show segment, Konrad's Box Office Bonanza?
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
Yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it.
I've inserted a sound effect there.
I have no idea what music I'm going to put on, but it's going to be groovy.
It better be. Yeah. It better be. Okay, so this week's year, it's a great year for movies. It's 1982, stacked with absolute all-timers. I couldn't start anywhere else, really. And the first movie is the Dustin Hoffman comedy Tootsie.
Oh, I've seen it.
How much do you think Tootsie grossed international?
See, this is the thing. 82. I'm either gonna get it really right or really wrong. I don't actually know the way films were grossing 40 years ago. So I'm going to have somewhat of a guess here, Conrad, because it's obviously a guess, but I've got no poll for this. Tootsie. It's something that I did watch. I'm gonna guess. I think back in those days, over 100 million wasn't the case. I'm gonna go for 62. Okay, yeah, 60. I was gonna say it's too high, but it's my first guess. 62 million.
Unfortunately, that's incorrect. It grossed $177,200,000 worldwide.
Fuck
Tootsie
off!
Absolutely cooked at the box office.
I can't believe that.
The people could not get enough of Dustin Hoffman dressed up as a lady and being in a sitcom.
2021, The Suicide Squad has just had an opening weekend of 26.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
A lot of people saw Tootsie. I mean, it got a Criterion Collection release, so some people really like that movie. I think it's okay.
I saw it growing up. I can't remember much about it.
Your second movie in 1982 is Rambo First Blood. Did that gross more or less than $177,200,000 dues?
Now, this is hard, actually, because my mind would say yes. But who knows? Maybe the world went mad for Tootsie. Like, it might have just gone mad for Tootsie.
Dustin Hoffman was a big name in the 80s.
Yeah, I would have went mad for Tootsie, to be honest with you. Maybe was Tootsie like that generation's like Mrs. Doubtfire?
That was the Hangover of 1982.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's Rambo. Come on, I gotta... Hang on, what number Rambo was this?
This is the first Rambo. Rambo First Blood.
Okay, it's gotta be higher then. I'm gonna go higher.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's also incorrect. Rambo First Blood only grossed $47,212,904. Nowhere near to Tootsie. Tootsie was outrageously popular.
I am really going to show my like modern day zeitgeist bias here.
yeah. Well, that's why I thought this was interesting.
Yeah, it's
because
very interesting.
There are some in this year that did not do very well that should have done, and others that did insanely well that no one has seen.
It's also the first time we're doing this game, so this will be the yardstick for where I have to aim for in points next time we do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it bears mentioning here that Anthony is coming into this without any context whatsoever. So like, you're feeling out the kind of values of movies, movie grosses in the.
I didn't know this was happening.
No, this is completely blind, and I'm not apologizing for that. It was about time someone took you to task. Okay, your third movie. It's one of my favourite movies of all time. It is The Thing. Did The Thing gross more or less than $47,212,904 internationally?
I don't know how much of a box office hit John Carpenter is. It must be a box office hit because it's Kurt Russell. It must be. Like, 47 million... See, this has thrown my whole thing out of whack. I guess 62 for Tootsie. I wasn't expecting anything over 100 million. The Thing. Now, it's sort of somewhat of a horror film, isn't it? So
yeah. It's a kind of a creepy ensemble horror.
So I have to think of it like this: horror films bring the audiences to the cinema.
But did they bring them to the cinema in 1982? Is the question.
That's a good question. 47 million for Rambo. The Thing. Oh my god! You've chosen the order of this as well.
I have. I've kept it interesting. I'll say that much.
Okay, The Thing. I'm gonna go higher just because of Kurt Russell.
That is incorrect. Unfortunately, The Thing was a complete financial failure. 19,629,760. Barely made its budget back and was critically panned at the time of release, which shows what critics know about movies. Frankly,
this is the last couple of weeks have really showed me I need to brush up on John Carpenter. That's what I've realized.
Yes, I mean you definitely do. But John Carpenter, you to be honest, your line of thinking was right. John Carpenter, with the exception of Halloween, probably. I'm trying to think of anything else he's made. He's never really been box office gold. Like he's always been more of a critic's darling, or not in the case of The Thing. Yeah. But
I sort of thought that. But Kurt Russell is a big name, you know.
He is.
And and when you look at it, Tootsie at 177, you know what I mean? It really. That's what I mean. It's modern day zeitgeist bias I have. I can't really. I can't put myself in a time where I wasn't alive at the minute. I will eventually learn how to do it though.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay, so fourth movie. It is the George A. Romero anthology horror Creepshow. Did that make more or less than $19,629,760?
You are a bastard, Conrad. You knew what you were doing here. You knew that I wouldn't really know what this film was about, and you knew, like...
My hands are clean with this one. Like, I'm just picking them from this... I was picking good movies. That's
I know. Just the fact that, like, this is a film that I don't really know too much about, but 19 million now, you say it was an absolute bomb, like, The Thing didn't do well at the box office, and it's still making 19 million. It makes me think this one must have done more. There's no way that you've put... I'm sort of metagaming now, but there's no way you've put 4 lowers in a row.
The metagame away, that's part of it. Is you have to get inside my mind. Get inside my head. So you saying you think Creepshow made more money than The Thing?
I have to. One of these highs is eventually going to be true.
You're correct. It did. It made $21,028,755. So a couple of million more. $1 million and change.
That makes me way happier than I thought it would, honestly.
Okay. Now, this next one...
How much did it make?
How much did Creepshow make?
Yeah.
21,028,755. So
that's
million and change.
That's
the next one, I'm not going to lie to you. If you don't get this, we might have to kick you off the podcast. The next movie is E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Did that make more than $21,028,755 at the box office?
I'm so glad you didn't put this one straight after Tootsie.
That would have been harsh.
Yeah, this is clearly higher.
You are correct. It was the highest grossing movie of 1982. Any guesses as to how
you
much
just
money
give me
you
the
think
answer.
It might have made?
You just give me the answer to the next one, Conrad.
That's true. Yeah, but I mean, you were going to get the. Believe me, you'd have got the next one anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's E.T. I know. It was still in the cinema when I was born, probably. Any guesses? What? Sorry, on how much?
Any guesses for how much it made?
Say 230.
$359,197,037.
You were getting to a third of a billion, and it's only 1982.
Yeah, that movie made a whole lot of cash. Okay, movie number 6. Another movie that I like, often incorrectly attributed to Steven Spielberg, who actually produced it. It was Tobe Hooper, the director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who directed this one. It is Poltergeist. Did that make more or less than $359,197,037?
Well, it's less, but I will say I'm surprised that people think Steven Spielberg directed that. I don't know. It doesn't really.
They plastered his name all over it because I think they wanted to sell it, and they did a good job.
Yeah.
It did make less. You're absolutely right. It made $76,606,280. So still a good chunk of change, more than Rambo, more than The Thing, more than Creepshow, but not in ET's stratus.
So that's 3 points. 3 points I've got so far. Can I get 5?
Yep, 3. Okay, next one. Easily in my top 5 favorite movies of all time. It's the Ridley Scott classic Blade Runner. Did that make more or less than $76,606,280?
Good question. I like the question.
It is a good question.
Harrison Ford had already done Star Wars at that point.
He had.
This is the type of film, Blade Runner is the type of film which I would 100% believe if you told me it wasn't appreciated when it was first released, and then, I can see that 100%. But Harrison Ford being in it after he'd already been in Star Wars, I don't know if he'd already been in Indiana Jones at this point. Potentially not.
I think Raiders of the Lost Ark might have been 84.
Yeah, I think it was after this.
Sure.
So, again, I was wrong doing this with Kurt Russell, but I am going to do it with Harrison Ford. I'm going to say 76 is a lot.
It is a lot.
It is a lot, but at the same time, it was a huge budget film, I think, at the time. I'm going to say higher, just as a gamble.
Okay. Unfortunately, you're incorrect. Blade Runner, another critical and financial failure in 1982. People did not like this movie when it came out.
I had the inkling.
Yeah, $27,580,111. Didn't make very much money at all.
I had the thought process there. I just took a gamble.
You took a gamble. It didn't quite pay off. But I'm interested to see these last few. We'll see how you get on with these last few, because I don't know how many of these you've seen. I know you've seen one of them because I've forced you to watch it. So here we go. 8th movie is the Arnold Schwarzenegger absolute classic, Conan the Barbarian. Did that make more or less than $27,580,111?
Conan, these all can't have bombed. So Conan the Barbarian must have made more. Isn't that his first film?
His first film was Hercules in New York, I believe, where he fights a bear in Central Park. But it was close to his first.
So he's coming hot off Hercules in New York. People are going to want to go see him.
He's Mr. Universe at this point. The people love him.
Yeah, I'm gonna say higher.
You are correct. Yeah, higher. It was $39,565,475. So about 12 million more. A very, very solid return for Conan's Swords and Sandals epic. Okay, now, this one's for our European listeners out there. The 9th movie on the list. It is a very long movie. I think it's about almost 4 hours long. It's a movie set entirely on a German U-boat. It is Das Boot. Did that make more or less than $39,565,475?
I have heard of Das Boot.
Yeah, it's a very good movie. Probably one of the most famous German movies, I'm going to say. Certainly among casual moviegoers. I think a lot of casual movie fans will know of Das Boot.
Okay. This could be a very tricky question here. Das Boot, German speaking, was there the hunger for a foreign language film in those days, or just was it in German cinemas all year long and people just kept going back to see it?
It is international. We're talking here. So.
Yeah, it is international. The problem is, I could see if it was like a Spanish film, or there's more people in the world who speak Spanish than there are who speak German. So, and I just don't know how prevalent subtitled movies in cinema were in those days. I really don't. So it's a bit of a shot in the dark. I'm just going to take another gamble. No, I won't. I'm going to play it safe, which also is probably going to be wrong. And I'm going to say lower. I'm sorry. I got it wrong, but I'd say lower.
No, you've got it right. Your instincts were right. Das Boot, very, very highly regarded by critics, but ultimately it was still a 4-hour-long German language war film set entirely on a U-boat. So it is very dry. Das Boot made $10,915,250.
Yeah, I was expecting it to be quite low.
A good instinct. Very good movie, though. Well worth seeing. And the final movie from our list in 1982, easily in my top 7 movies in this series of all time. It is Rocky 3. Did Rocky 3 make more than $10,915,250 at the box office?
Yes, is the answer. I'm very surprised that Rocky 3 came out the same year as Rambo. So
listen, Stallone was busy in the 80s.
Yeah, that's why Rambo didn't do as well, because they already seen a Stallone movie that year. I think I'm gonna go higher. I would be surprised. Now, I probably am wrong about this, but I would be surprised if this didn't get more than Tootsie.
You're on the right track, but it is higher than Das Boot. Obviously, it made 124,146,897, so not as much as Tootsie. Tootsie was just a runaway success. It's one of those interesting movies where I have seen it. It's pretty good, but I don't understand how it made as much money as it did. But then, Venom made $1 billion a couple of years ago, so we live in... The movie industry is a weird thing. I
think at a certain point in time, the idea of a man dressing up as a woman was inherently funny to people, which is strange. Like it's like, I understand people dressing up as funny, like, but I think just like for the longest time, I think like the idea of cross-dressing like that, and I don't even know if that's a correct term, but I have no idea, but the idea of a man dressing up as a woman, for the longest time after that, it was referred to as like, you're like Tootsie. Like that was in the zeitgeist of the world for like 20 years after. Like that was what was referenced when a man dressed up as a woman. Yeah,
no, it definitely kind of captured or was kind of absorbed into the wider public conscious in a way that probably isn't earned by the quality of the movie, but these things happen sometimes. As I say, movie consumption is weird. So that's 6 points out of a possible 10 for you. That's a pretty good first showing, I'm gonna say, in Konrad's box office bonanza.
It's a little bit like when you first get into a pool and it's a bit cold. You need to get in down to your neck, and then once you're in, you're like, actually, this is quite nice.
Have a swim around, let yourself get submerged in it, and you'll quickly find your feet. Honorable mentions very quickly. 48 Hours made $78 million that year. Dark Crystal made $40 million that year. Fast Times at Ridgemont High made $27 million that year. Mad Max 2, $23 million. And The Secret of Nim made $14 million. So there were some absolute fucking bangers in 1982, it is safe to say.
I'm very surprised that Dark Crystal made $40 million, because that is sort of remembered as one of the Henson ones which didn't do very well. But $40 million is not bad.
I think it cost them quite a lot to make because of the puppets. But there you go, Anthony. You've scored 6 points in the debut segment of Konrad's box office bonanza. How do you feel?
I feel great. Hi, Mum. Like, thanks very much. 6 points. I'll be bringing home 7 next time. I promise you that.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll probably be back to the feature again next week. Because there's some good ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to do it there for Konrad's box office bonanza. Okay. That's my segue out of that. There's not. I don't think there's going to be any kind of transition scene here, so we're just going to power straight through. We're going to go from the financial successes and failures of 1982 to a movie that was objectively and demonstrably a massive box office success. It is the movie we're here to talk about. It is Makoto Shinkai's Your Name from 2016. It is the second highest grossing Japanese movie of all time, earning $250 million. Only behind Spirited Away from Studio Ghibli, which I actually know how much that made. So I mean, I guess first things first. That seems, again, didn't really mean this to be like a kind of look how much money these movies made kind of episode, but I guess it's going to be. That kind of surprised me, finding that out. I would have thought like a Kurosawa or maybe another Ghibli film would have an unassailable lead in that, but I don't know if they're adjusted for inflation, these old values, to be fair.
They're probably not, to be honest with you, but it's interesting, actually. having seen the film, it's good. Like, don't get me wrong, it is good. But I've definitely seen films coming out of Japan that I prefer. Let's say.
Okay, interesting.
This must have hit a particular mood and feeling within the culture at the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I think it did get a fairly well marketed US release as well, which definitely helps because a lot of the anime movies just don't get that unless they're Studio Ghibli, I think.
Yeah, no, but like, I am surprised by that, to be honest with you, the size of that income, and I mean, it probably sets this filmmaker up to have like a successful career now because he'll get funding for no matter what he wants to do now. So yeah,
absolutely. He went on to make I believe Weathering with You in 2019, which was also an enormous success. I should qualify at this point. The title of this movie is actually Your Name, full stop. That's important. There's punctuation in the title. I've got to mention it. Like we've got to make sure we name it correctly. And in that vein, let's do our traditional anime credibility check. Anthony, did you watch this in English or in Japanese?
Of course, I watched it in English.
I was gonna watch it in English because I'm lazy and apparently the dub is very good. But to be honest, Netflix rather have this incredibly annoying habit. I don't know what you and Ema are like, but my partner is a big fan of having subtitles on at all times, pretty much. And
we did that. Yeah.
Well, so Netflix's anime. It's probably not their fault. It's probably the subtitles they're provided when they license these movies. But when you listen to it in English, the subtitles very rarely match what is actually said in English, and I find it incredibly confusing. So I was like, we're gonna have to watch this in Japanese.
That was an issue.
Yeah. So I've actually made my viewing experience more legitimate by avoiding this issue entirely.
Yeah, you have. I got both. I got like the actual audio English and the subtitle because with two young children in the house, like even when they're in bed, you still have the subtitles on just because you're just used to having them on. And there was some questionable translations, we'll say.
Yeah, that's absolutely standard for Netflix. So for those of you who haven't seen this movie, it's kind of, I guess it kind of positions itself or starts off as like a body swap comedy kind of thing.
I don't really know where to go with this in terms of spoilers and non-spoilers. We'll try to be as non-spoiler as possible. But it's one of those films which you can say the second half of is very different than the first half.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You had Matt Damon's downsizing, and now you've got this. This is... I've never
seen Matt downsizing, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, well, the first half of the downsizing, Matt Damon it's all about like the lead up to being downsized, and it's like, oh my god, he's going to be tiny, and it's all this sort of thing. And then the second half of it is literally just him in the small world, and because it's all in the small world, he's not small, he's just a normal sized man. Like, it's so weird. Anyway, I will say about this film, up until the change, I was enjoying it. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was... I liked it. But I did think to myself... And I'm glad it changed because I was judging anime watchers. Because I was thinking to myself, Konrad, the first half of this film, I was thinking... I've seen this film and I'm pretty sure it starred Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Like, this was basically... Like, if you were going to make this film in the mid-2000s, Lizzie McGuire would be starring in it. Like, the first half of this film was, honestly, like a Nickelodeon Disney Channel... body swap comedy, which looked nice and was all about teenagers. Like, I was like, where's this going? Like,
Yeah, I think I think I enjoyed the first half probably more than you did, but I think so. Essentially, this movie tells the story of a young boy in Tokyo called Taki and a young girl in I can't remember, Itamori. I think it's like a little kind of like village, a fairly rural village out like rural Japan somewhere, nearish Tokyo, but not that near, called Mitsuha, who begin waking up in each other's bodies and essentially start... They're freaked out initially, then they start communicating with each other by leaving little notes in each other's phones or writing things on each other's hands, and eventually they start attempting to influence each other's lives in, fairly quirky, fun ways. Mitsuha tries to help Taki out with getting a girlfriend. Taki doesn't actually help Mitsuha that much, to be honest, but he certainly is... he learns a bit about the kind of Shintoism that Mitsuha or just Shinto, not I don't think Shintoism is a word. Shinto that Mitsuha engages in, and yeah, the first half I think it's carried an awful lot by how beautiful the animation is. I think
I've got a bone to pick you there.
Go on.
It's not beautiful animation; it's beautiful drawings. The actual animation, I was doing what I had to do. I was comparing it to Akira, which we watched a few weeks ago. Like the actual animation is very, very generic, but the actual image on the screen is beautiful.
See, I think the revolving shots around characters as it takes in the kind of landscapes were very well animated for the most part.
I suppose I'm just focusing on character animation. I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not as dynamically animated as Akira. I think Akira, you can look at the bike chase at the beginning of that and be like, holy shit, that's like amazing. The animation that and the way lights play off surfaces and stuff like that is incredibly complicated. But what I kind of found here was in the opening half, before, and we won't get into spoilers just yet, but before the change occurs in the story, there is an element, and I'm loath to do this because it's a very kind of like Western view on things, to be like, oh, this is similar to Studio Ghibli, even though it's not, because that's your only point of reference. But there is a bit of the Hayao Miyazaki in this with its clear kind of like reverence for nature and traditional elements of Japanese life, like its depiction of Shinto rituals. But it's also I feel like it is very much its own thing, and I found it really stunning to look at, I think. I wanted to get your opinion on this. When we got the musical intro sequence that made it feel like an episode of an anime TV series, I was like, I'm going to enjoy this. And then we get a couple more musical montages throughout. How did you find those? Because I can imagine them being quite jarring to someone who doesn't necessarily watch that much anime.
Yeah, I think I've seen enough anime to sort of expect certain things. I actually really loved, there were certain moments where the music was swelling under the scene, and then it was sort of building to a point, a point where I was like, this feels like a musical, and they're about to burst into song. Yeah. But then it was just like a song in the soundtrack. But I really felt like there was a moment where it was going to be like the character was going to start singing. But I really actually enjoyed that. I liked it. I liked how the music was sort of really highlighted in certain aspects. Obviously, as you say, a little montagey stuff that they did as well. But even like some of the songs in it as well, I thought to myself, geez, I'll listen to that. I'll get that on Spotify and listen to that.
Yeah, there's some really, really catchy stuff in the soundtrack, and they're very kind of like there is an orchestral score, but there's also actual pop songs that play. I don't know whether they were written for this or whether they're just licensed, but they're really distinctive, and it's not something you see very much in Western movies. I guess like maybe the equivalent would be something like Suicide Squad, where they just use a licensed song to increase the effect of a segment, but. It really struck me in this. Going back to your point about how you kind of felt like the first half was like was it the Olsen twins in Freaky Friday, or was
that was Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan.
Lindsay Lohan. That's the one I was thinking of. Which one were you thinking of?
Oh, the Olsen twins were in like basically a Prince and the Pauper retelling where one of them was...
okay. Yeah, sure. I mean... I kind of see what you mean. I think so. Going into this movie, I was kind of expecting, obviously, the idea of like identity is explored to some extent in this. I think that it sets up some really interesting potential questions, and I don't want to criticize this movie for what it isn't. But when it was like, oh, she's in his body and he's in her body, and is this going to get into like gender identity? And one of them maybe realize that there's a suggestion that Mitsuha in Taki's body is starting to kind of flirt with a woman that he works with and has a crush on, and I was kind of in my head thinking, oh, is it going to turn out that maybe she's gay and she's figuring out she's gay through living in his body? And it didn't really go into any of that. No. Did you kind of expect have the similar expectations to where it was going to go, or not?
I didn't actually. Interestingly enough, I don't know why. Actually, that seems like a very logical sort of expectation to have of a film these days, which deals with body swapping, especially between a teenage boy and a teenage girl who are sort of finding themselves. And I definitely see those, like when they were mentioning about that, is it Taki? Yeah, when Taki was like, whenever Mitsuo was in Taki's body, and like they were mentioning like sort of the feminine nature of that he was sort of portraying, I was like, okay, well that's really cool. Is maybe that going to make him get more in touch with that side later on? And maybe you could argue that it did, but no, I didn't actually think it was going to go down a gender identity route. It would have been very interesting if it did. I would be interested to see if it did do that, whether it would have been as commercially successful. It's one of those things that maybe that would have hindered the box office, because people, it's a sensitive issue, and some people would you would have some talking heads on the internet trying to convince you not to see it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think the route that it does go, and I'm going to say this now because, I'm sure we'll come back to it later, but I really loved this movie. But I will admit that I'm an old softie who loves a traditional love story, and the route that this movie ends up taking, I think, although it has a really cool plot device and does some really compelling stuff in its second act, it is kind of just a love story that it tells. And I don't mean that to sound dismissive. There's nothing wrong with telling a love story, but there was potential for it to do some other stuff that it didn't really do. And I was a little disappointed that it didn't do them, even though what it did do, I think it did very well.
The question is, did it avoid it enough that you could respect it on its own, or did it do like a J.K. Rowling where imply an awful lot, but don't commit to the fact that Dumbledore's gay in the actual text?
No, I mean, I think that J.K. Rowling stuff is just done in bad faith to be like, I don't know, this
queer baiting, is that what it's called? Queer baiting, I think.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, it's just like, kind of it's saying, yeah, this character's gay. I'm not going to do anything to actually, further the cause or support this issue at all. I'm just going to pay lip service to it and not actually worry about it. And I feel like that actually, to be honest, I don't think that was ever the intention of this movie. I was just kind of thinking maybe they'd get into it and was a bit disappointed when
that was the story you told yourself about the film in your head before you saw it.
Yes.
Before we move on, Konrad, because I feel like you're about to transition, but there is something I want to say here, because there is another animation studio in the world who has a really good chance they'll not do it, but it's like a perfect setup for the first like trans rights / gender identity storyline within a major motion picture, in terms of not just animation but in general. Because if they made a third Finding Nemo film, right? Now this, I apologize, this might be my cis straight white male brain really being offensive, and I don't know I am, so if I am, let me know. But do you know how clownfish naturally, whenever the mother dies, naturally in nature, the male clownfish transitions to female? Did you know that?
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I thought of a really cool third Finding Nemo film, because they're Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, Finding Marlin, because we all know that at the start of Finding Nemo, the motherfish died. What if there was a gender identity storyline with Marlin, his father, doing the natural transition of a clownfish into a female fish?
That's an interesting idea. I'm trying to think how they'd like even represent that. I
have no idea.
Like a fish, but
I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, something like that would be cool. I thought you were going to say like Bugs Bunny dresses up as a woman in Space Jam 3 or something like that.
No.
That's not going to solve the problem. That's going to make it worse.
But like I know, like I don't know. I'm coming at it from left field here, but in my mind, I'm like, has there ever been an opportunity to make a film about trans rights where there really isn't much of an argument from the other side? It's like, well, these are clownfish. Like, this is what they do in nature. So what's your argument? We can...
Yeah, and Disney would love that as well, because they can actually just avoid ever saying trans rights in it, because it's like, it's just what happens in nature.
It works, but actually, you're right. It goes both ways, doesn't it?
We don't have to engage with this issue at all, and we can make some money out of it by pretending to be supportive.
Actually, well, I don't want them to do it now.
Well... someone's going to do it at some point, but it's not your name, and it's probably not going to be Disney either. Let's be honest. The one thing I did want to mention before, actually, there were two things I wanted to mention. First, very quickly, before we get into spoiler stuff, I love the fact that the comet in this movie, which there is a comet that is streaming through the sky that everyone's looking up at, and it turns out to be a fairly big plot device. I won't say what it is just now, but I love the fact that it's called Comet Tiamat, which because I'm a massive nerd, or not. Well, I say I'm a massive nerd because I think I'm a massive nerd, but I'm actually turned out to not be as massive a nerd as I think I am. I was like, that's a D&D reference. And then I went and read about it, and Tiamat's like a Babylonian symbol of primordial creation. And I was just thinking that it was going to be a reference to a many-headed dragon because I'm basic. No, the one thing I really did want to mention, because I'm a big fan of Satoshi Kon, who made anime movies like Perfect Blue and Paprika, and he had a very distinct style of editing and cutting between things. And I feel like we get a couple of little moments of that in this movie, similar to it, where there's a brief moment where Mitsuo's sister recommends that she sell the kuchikami sake, the sort of rice that she chews up and regurgitates into a box, which then ferments, and it goes up to like what seems like just a screen of her, like a promotional poster of her selling this sake, and then it pans down or pedestals down to reveal it was a thought bubble above her head, which I loved. And there was another one, I don't know if you saw, where someone was taking like an Instagram photo of some food, and then they took the phone away and the food was gone to show a passage of time. And I am a sucker for an inventive cut, and those were great. Okay, I think to properly get into this, we're gonna have to get into spoiler territory now. There's no way around it. So if you haven't seen Your Name, or you would like to see it before having it spoiled for you, here is your warning. Now, it's the start of this movie, we've said, is kind of like body swap comedy. There's hints that it's going to turn into a love story. Very, very kind of mild hints, I'm going to say, but not the kind of love story it's going to turn into. So, I mean, did you see any of this coming in the sort of second half?
So the time travel? No, I didn't. Yes. I didn't actually. But on reflection, there was some great little clues laid, like the service of the phone not being there and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I thought also at the very beginning of the film, whenever like she handed him the ribbon. I was in my head. I was like, okay, well, we'll probably find out about that later. But I had no idea what was going on. Obviously, once we found out it was time travel, then my brain was going overload, like thinking, like, the red thing on his wrist, that's got to be her ribbon. Like, I knew that as soon as I knew it was time travel. Sure. But I didn't see it coming is the answer to the question, though. What about you?
So, in a rare moment of I'm going to call it like I say it, brilliance is the word I'm going to use to describe this. Within 10 minutes of this movie starting, I leaned across to my partner and I said, I bet one of them's dead, and they were alive several years ago. And wouldn't you know it, turns out old Konrad, I can't even pronounce. See, I was about to brag then, but then I couldn't even pronounce my own name correctly, and I've completely undone any of the credibility of the bragging that I was about to do. So let's move on and just agree to disagree on this point. It didn't sneak up on me. I will. The time travel stuff did kind of sneak up on me because I thought it was going to end. I thought it was going to be, them getting closer and closer together, and then he would realize at the end that she died. It reminded me a little bit in a very tangential way of a new-ish Henry Golding and the woman from Game of Thrones, whose name I can now not remember, the one who played Daenerys,
Emilia Clarke,
where she meets a man and he, it's a rom-com. I can't remember the name of this movie, so I'll try to keep it vague.
Love something,
yeah. She meets a man, and it's typical rom-com stuff. He teaches her to, be more productive in life or whatever, and it turns out that she's had a heart transplant, and she has his heart. And it kind of I was reminded that is not a good movie. You don't need to go and watch that to get any context for Your Name, but it kind of put me in mind of a similar kind of thing where I was expecting that heartbreak to come at the end. As it turns out, what we get instead is Taki realizing pretty early on that, like
45 minutes in or so, I think.
Yeah, like the comet that they've all been looking at hits Mitsuo's town 3 years ago, and he must basically invoke this kind of nebulous spiritual idea of Masubi, this like these threads that connect individuals across space and time, to essentially ask for another day to swap into her body to help her save the town. Now, I really liked that. I thought it was really compelling. The whole like racing around trying to save things. Did that work for you?
It did work for me. It did very much work for me. It's interesting. Post this TV show Dark, I have to really realign my mind in terms of time travel stuff, because my whole life I've loved time travel. But how serious the creators of Dark took the time travel and tried to be as consistent as possible. I really have to realign my mind back to a previous time before Dark to really appreciate time travel the way I always have. And I really did enjoy it. Anything to do with going into the past and trying to change something from happening, I've always had a really soft spot for that. And I thought they did a really good job in this. And I liked the fact as well that they left it up in the air until very late on whether or not they were successful in changing anything, you know?
Yeah, I love it. We'll come to the ending in a second, because I'm a sucker for that kind of ending, and it very much worked on me. But it's interesting that you make the Dark comparison here, because as soon as I saw the braided hairband, the red hairband that kind of linked them, I was like, oh, Ariadne's thread.
Yeah.
Here we go. And you know, although I totally agree with you, I think Dark spoils you in terms of how committed it is to making its time travel very complicated, but also functional. It also works and feels like it makes sense. Whereas this, they kind of hand wave it, which I don't, I don't mind. They're just like, I don't know, Masubi. It's this idea of beings being connected across space and time, and we're not going to get into the intricacies of how the time travel works. It just does work because they're connected by this energy. But there is that similarity between Taki and Mitsuha and Jonas and Marta in Dark, I think, in this idea of beings kind of indelibly linked across time and space, which I found really fascinating.
Yeah, I think that's really, really great as well. And I like the idea of this Japanese culture being brought into this time travel, because as you mentioned Ariadne's thread there, it seems like, and I also recently watched Sisyphus on Netflix as well, a Korean time travel show. It seems that Greek mythology is the first thing people think of when they want to make a time travel thing, which is really cool. Don't get me wrong, but I liked seeing an introduction of a different culture into this. Obviously, we had the Ariadne thread too, but I liked this idea of it being described, this link between them being described in some way that wasn't just, you know, let's retell the same thing again with Greek mythology, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you know, it might not have been a reference to Ariadne's thread directly. It may be something from, you know, Japanese mythology that I just don't know about because I'm ignorant of it. But it certainly reminded me of that.
100%.
Okay, so let's talk the ending. We got to talk the ending. I've made no bones about this. I'm a big softie. I love a happy ending. And the only thing I love more than a happy ending is an ending that pretends it might not be a happy ending until the very moment that it becomes a happy ending. Now, this movie ends with Mitsuha confronting her dad, or the beginning of a confrontation with her dad, who she doesn't really get on with, and who's basically refusing to let all the people of Atomi leave to the high school, which will save their lives. And she kind of runs in, and it cuts to, I think it's like 4 years later, something like that, like Taki going to work or going to job interviews.
A couple of years later, 5 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. And they basically, because they have figured out a way to they figured out a way to kind of talk to each other while they're on top of this mountain where the energies that link them are the strongest. And they've in theory been able to stop this from happening. But the price they pay is that they forget each other's names, and Taki chooses to write on Mitsuha's hand that he loves her rather than his name, which would have saved everyone a whole lot of hassle, to be honest, if he hadn't done it. Now, a more cynical person than me, and I'm not pointing the finger at you, Anthony, but I'm just saying maybe it could be, would find the ending a little convenient that these two somehow managed to find each other again in Tokyo at the very end. Did that work for you, or did you find yourself rolling your eyes?
I didn't find myself rolling my eyes. But I think if you don't roll your eyes at the Eagles picking up Frodo and Sam, you're not going to roll your eyes at much. That's a good point. That's how I sort of felt about it. You know, like I just thought to myself, it was like an Eagles moment. Like this, it's like it has to happen. It's cool that it happens. The ending wouldn't happen without it. I think I would. This is the type of show. Like there was a time when we were watching Dark, where when I was first watching the show, I was kind of wanted everything to sort of have a more nihilistic ending. It was kind of maybe you could argue it was a little nihilistic, but I actually don't believe it was. I think they could have went that way here, but I really like that they didn't. I really, and as you say, like they waited till the very end. Like it was like his normal life now. He doesn't know this girl's name anymore, and then all of a sudden, boom. She's on the train, just randomly meets her on the train.
Yeah.
It worked for me. What didn't work for me, and this shows you how much of a pernickety asshole I am, was they saw each other on trains crossing.
Yes.
I don't believe they would have found each other on the same day. That is ridiculous. Can you, like, them randomly meeting on the train the first time, fine. But then when you see it, like, how do you know what station they got off? Where do you start looking? Yeah. I just was like, no, that doesn't work.
That ending. I was in full on like romance mode. I was like, I don't care. Get them together. Like the energy of the universe is bringing these two together. But I think if I'd have taken a step back from it, and had I heard anyone like criticize it, I would have been like, yeah, that's fair enough. Like, it is ridiculous that they managed to find each other, but whatever. They get, they say the name of the film as the last line of the movie, and you know that they're going to be together forever because they love each other. And gosh darn it, if I didn't have a tear in my eye and a lump in the back of my throat when it happened.
And the music swells. The music swells. Just to end it, I just want to ask you whether or not we should have been laughing. Were you laughing every time he woke up and he started touching her boobs? Like, there was
yes, it never stopped being funny, and like, it became funnier when he denied that he was doing it as well.
It was so funny to me, like, that he was like, no, I shouldn't, it's her body. Yeah. He literally said that, and then the sister, he's crying, like, as her, he's crying, and then the sister comes in, and he's like bawling his eyes out, but still holding the boobs.
There is some very good comedy in this, I have to say, like some moments that really made me laugh. There's like when they are on the top of the mountain, and they're like, let's write our names on each other's hands so we don't forget each other, and he writes on her hand, and you assume he's written his name, and then she starts writing on his hand and just draws a line and then disappears. And even though it's quite a sad moment, I burst out laughing, so I was like, that's so unfortunate. But I didn't realize that he was an idiot who wrote "I love you" rather than his name. Oh, God. which really would have saved some time. But so overall, then, how did you find Your Name? Full stop.
For Your Name, Full Stop, I actually really like it. It's funny it's called Your Name, Full Stop, because the people who made our music for this podcast, Jared Iscariot and Nancy Wyatt, are in a band called Cloakroom Q, full stop.
It's important. That punctuation's doing a lot of work.
Well, they originally called Cloakroom, full stop, but then a band from America with like 100,000 subscribers or something messaged them and said, don't you even Google the name of your band, you dickheads? And then they were like, all right, man, great. We're Cloakroom Q now. But check that stuff out in the description. But yeah, so I'm a lover of the full stop, if I'm honest with you. I did enjoy this film, and I think I painted it in the wrong way when I first said it was like a Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen film, or
you've made your bed. You've said it's cheap and rubbish.
Listen, last week Konrad and I had a bit of a disagreement on Inception. Actually, we didn't. That was the funny part. But let me say this to you: your bias is painting that statement, Konrad. I absolutely fucking love Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. Me saying that, I would watch Lizzie McGuire to this day. Come on, Gordo, lovely man. But, and actually, I think, are they rebooting? Hopefully they're rebooting. Let's see.
Surely that's going to get rebooted at some point. And they're going to bring them back for a heartwarming reunion.
It was iCarly that's being rebooted, actually. No, but I don't, listen. I would watch a Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen film to this day. Lovely, cute little girls, great film, a lot of heart, those films. That was your bias painting that. I love that first half of the film. When the time travel started, obviously I liked it even more. I did really enjoy this film. Will I rush to watch it? I think we just watch it again. Maybe I'll watch it in a few years. I personally, I know what you mean about the sweeping shots, but I personally, it was such a lovely film to look at. But the animation to me was like, the actual character animation was just like watching a TV series of anime. It didn't feel like, when I say Akira, like whenever like the body is growing and like the rolls are coming out, and it was so visceral and so fluid. This to me felt like it was the same style of character animation as you had in like a normal anime show, which isn't to say it's bad, but it didn't stand out to me in terms of that, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's fair enough. I think I think there is something to be said for how the art of the environments certainly did a lot to help.
Oh,
the
it was
animation
beautiful.
in my
It was
eyes.
beautiful.
But I mean, I would agree with you. I loved this movie. I thought it was really lovely, really touching. I think there are things I would have liked it to have done with its narrative, but ultimately it didn't need to do them to be a great movie, because it was still great regardless of whether it did them. Which is going to just about do it for us, I think, here on the Best Movie Podcast Ever, which leads us quite naturally, as it always does, to one simple question, which is, Anthony, what's your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, I've literally just popped into my mind. I don't know why it popped into my mind, but
Careful.
yeah.
Let's see what it is.
Well, it's not a Japanese film, actually. It's maybe because I mentioned Sisyphus. It's a Korean film. I'm going to say Parasite, actually.
Okay, Parasite's a great movie. I'm going to say Your Name. Yeah, I love this. I'm going to go watch Weathering with You sometime very soon, I think, because I want more of this guy. Thank you to Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot for the use of our theme song. You can find links to their stuff down in the thing below. And thank you for listening. Please consider subscribing. We are The Culture Cave on YouTube and the Best Movie Podcast Ever on podcasting apps, if that is your preferred medium of consumption. Get involved in the comments. Give the show a like. Really does help. And we will see you same time, same place next week.
And cut.